Going into the wild feels like freedom, but sometimes it becomes a fight to stay alive. In this video, we will look at 5 real stories of outdoor adventures that turned into final moments. No warnings, no second chances, just sudden tragic endings where survival slipped away. It was October 19, 1968, in Yosemite National Park, California. Evelyn Consuela Roseman, a 24-year-old from San Francisco, was found dead near the base of Nevada Fall. She had gone on a solo hike 3 days earlier and never came back. 3 hikers eventually found her body about 200 feet downstream from the 594-foot-high waterfall. Evelyn worked as a masseuse in Yosemite during the tourist season. She was independent and liked hiking alone. On that day, the weather was cool and the Merced River's flow was low, which was normal for October. So when she disappeared, the idea that she had been swept away by strong water didn't make sense. The scene and later investigation raised many questions that still don't have answers more than 50 years later. When found, her body showed clear signs that something terrible had happened. Her corduroy pants were pulled down to her ankles and badly torn. Her sweater was pulled over her head, and another black sweater was nearby. She wasn't wearing any undergarments. Strangely, her purse, still holding her belongings, was found far from her body, sitting on a bridge above the waterfall. Her body's location was also odd. If she had simply fallen, she should have been directly below the fall, but she was about 200 feet downstream. Investigators quickly ruled out the idea that she had jumped on her own. Even if she had, she wouldn't have landed so far away from the base. The autopsy revealed more disturbing details. Evelyn died from a major head injury, consistent with a fall from a great height. Parts of her brain tissue were found 50 feet away on a rock closer to the waterfall's center. Every bone in her body was broken, which matched the force of a fall. But something didn't add up. While her bones were shattered, her skin was almost completely intact. In falls like this, serious tearing of clothing and skin is expected, but that didn't happen here. Another troubling discovery was made during the autopsy. Evelyn had injuries suggesting she was violated after she had already passed. This was later confirmed in a review of the case. It became clear this wasn't an accident. Someone either pushed Evelyn or caused her to fall and possibly moved her body afterward. Investigators even considered the idea that someone could have launched her. The idea that an animal moved her body was suggested but didn't fit. There were no bite marks, claw injuries, or signs of dragging. No animal tracks were found nearby either. Despite the evidence, Evelyn's case was handled quietly. Mariposa County officials said they might call a coroner's jury because there are aspects that need to be cleared up, but no further details were given. They confirmed it didn't look like she ended her own life. The FBI got involved, but their files were never released. They said the case was still technically open, so the public was left with only a few details from news reports and later books. In 2019, at a paranormal conference called Lapis, author Richard Freeman suggested Evelyn's death could have been caused by a cryptid, but many disagreed. One woman in the audience pointed out that there was already clear evidence of human violence and that no supernatural explanation was needed. The book, Off the Wall: Death in Yosemite, added even more unsettling information. It said Evelyn had been manhandled after her fall. The book also mentioned that she had worked as a topless waitress before and as a masseuse at the park, details that might have affected how seriously her case was taken back then. The big questions remain. Why move her body? Why risk being seen? Why not leave her where she fell? No solid answers have ever been found. Today, Evelyn's death stands as one of Yosemite's darkest and most puzzling stories. Someone caused it, and whoever it was, they were never caught. It was September 1st, 1974, deep in Oregon's Siskiyou Mountains, near a remote area called Carberry Creek, close to the now vanished town of Copper. Richard Cowden, a 28-year-old logging truck driver, had originally planned to work on his driveway that weekend. But after his truck unexpectedly broke down, he and his wife, 22-year-old Belinda, decided to take their children, 5-year-old David and 5-month-old Melissa, on a last-minute camping trip. They packed up their 1956 Ford pickup, brought along their pet basset hound, Droopy, and headed for the woods. The Cowdens were a simple family from White City, Oregon, who loved the outdoors. Their campsite was set up by Carberry Creek, a quiet spot in the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest. It seemed like a peaceful place to spend a weekend, until everything went wrong. On the morning of September 1st, Richard and David were seen buying milk at the Copper General Store around 9 a.m. They were last seen walking back toward the campsite. After that, the family was never seen alive again. Belinda's mother, who lived nearby, was expecting them for dinner. When they didn't show up, she drove to the campsite and immediately sensed something was off. The truck was parked normally. The keys were on the picnic table. Belinda's purse and the diaper bag were left out. The camp stove was assembled, and the carton of milk, now cold, was still sitting there. Richard's wallet, wristwatch, and a pack of Belinda's cigarettes were untouched. The only missing items were their swimsuits. After waiting for an hour, she called the police. Officers, state troopers, and Oregon State Police arrived that night. The scene felt unsettling. Trooper Erickson later described it, "That camp was spooky. Even the milk was still on the table." The next morning, Droopy the dog was found scratching at the door of the Copper General Store. He was alone, dirty but alive. The search that followed was massive. Hundreds of volunteers, state police, the National Guard, Explorer Scouts, and the U.S. Forest Service scoured the area by foot and by air. Infrared sensors were even used from helicopters. Over 25 miles of rugged terrain were searched, but nothing was found. The official search ended on September 7th. Still, the Cowdens family and friends kept looking on their own, weekend after weekend. No clues ever surfaced. Investigators ruled out robbery, drowning, or the idea that the family ran away. Richard earned enough to support them, and all valuables were left untouched. Something terrible had happened, but there were no leads. Then, on April 12, 1975, two gold prospectors hiking 7 miles from the campsite made a gruesome discovery. They found the body of a man tied to a tree. Nearby, inside a shallow cave sealed with rocks, were the remains of a woman, a child, and an infant. Dental records confirmed they were Richard, Belinda, David, and Melissa. Autopsies revealed Belinda and David had both been shot with a .22 caliber rifle. Melissa died from blunt force trauma. Richard's cause of death couldn't be determined. Investigators believed whoever was responsible knew the area well. A volunteer who had searched that same cave months earlier insisted the bodies weren't there at the time, suggesting they were moved. A family visiting from Los Angeles reported seeing a suspicious group, a man, a woman, and another man in a pickup, near the Cowden campsite the day they vanished. Investigators believed it was Dwayne Lee Little and his parents. Little was a convicted killer recently paroled and was known to have been in Copper that weekend. Although Little's girlfriend later said he owned a .22 caliber rifle and a former cellmate claimed Little confessed to the crime, there was never enough evidence to charge him. In 1980, Little was sent back to prison for attacking a woman in Portland and is still serving 3 life sentences. He has never spoken about the Cowden case. The Cowden family's disappearance and tragic end remain one of Oregon's most chilling mysteries. The peaceful campsite, the massive search, and the disturbing discovery all point to something planned by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The forest has long since swallowed any remaining answers, and the question of who took the lives of Richard, Belinda, David, and baby Melissa still hangs in the air, unanswered. It was March 23, 2025, on the Makaleha Falls Trail in Kauai, Hawaii. Gianna Buzetta, a 26-year-old pastry chef from Oceanside, California, had finally reached the place she had dreamed about for years. She was there with her boyfriend, Connor Quinton, on what was meant to be a peaceful and memorable hike. Earlier that day, Gianna told Connor he had made her dream come true. She was full of happiness, completely present, surrounded by nature, and the person she loved most. Gianna wasn't an ordinary hiker. She was the executive pastry chef at Juné Jolie, a Michelin-starred restaurant in Carlsbad. She had worked there for 4 years and was a core member of the team. Her colleagues described her as hardworking, humble, and extremely talented. Despite her success, she stayed grounded, known for her sharp humor and love for animals. She often volunteered at rescue shelters and always put others before herself. That morning at Makaleha Falls started calmly. Gianna and Connor stood in a shallow pool at the base of the falls, enjoying the quiet. Then a loud noise echoed across the cliffs. Connor looked up but couldn't spot where it came from. Moments later, a large boulder broke loose from high above and came crashing down. There was no time to move. It struck Gianna directly, hitting her in the head, and she collapsed into the water. Connor immediately pulled her out. She was unconscious but still breathing and bleeding heavily. With no cell service in the remote area, Connor made a decision. He would run for help. He sprinted 3 miles across rough terrain, climbing over rocks and pushing through thick brush, determined to find a signal. When he finally reached an area with reception, he called for emergency services. Rescue teams responded quickly. They hiked to the falls, found Gianna still alive, and worked to stabilize her. She was airlifted to Wilcox Memorial Hospital and then transferred to Queens Medical Center in Honolulu due to the severity of her injuries. Her parents, Katie and Sal Bozzetta, flew to Hawaii immediately. They were able to reach her in time and be by her side when she passed away the next day. The loss was devastating for her family, but they found some comfort knowing that Gianna had spent her final hours surrounded by the beauty she had always dreamed of and with someone she loved deeply. Her mother later shared that Gianna experienced true happiness in her last moments. Back in Carlsbad, the news hit the community hard. At June Jolie, Gianna's absence left a deep void. Restaurant owner John Resnick described the loss as paralyzing. Staff members said she brought energy, kindness, and determination to everything she did. She was confident but humble, quiet but expressive through her craft, always pushing herself to improve. Gianna's passion for baking started young. She worked alongside her mother at age 12, helping with an event and floral business. By 17, she often juggled 3 jobs. After high school, she studied at the Culinary Institute of America in Napa, completed externships at Michelin-starred kitchens like Spago and Patina in Los Angeles, then returned to Southern California to continue her culinary journey. Alongside her work at June Jolie, she built a private cake business. Her desserts were known for their balance, colorful and detailed without being overly sweet, using natural ingredients like fruits, herbs, and flowers. After her passing, June Jolie announced a special dinner fundraiser on April 7th to help cover her family's expenses. Every seat was filled. An online fundraiser started by a family friend, Carly Wund, quickly gained support. The goal was $225,000. Within days, over $40,000 had been raised, with donations coming from across the country. Gianna was remembered as someone who always cared for others. She checked in on friends, volunteered at shelters, and brought quiet strength wherever she went. Her family expressed deep gratitude to the emergency responders and medical staff who fought to save her. They also praised Connor for his actions that day, calling him heroic for never giving up. Gianna Bozzetta wasn't just a gifted chef. She was a daughter, a friend, and someone who lived each moment fully. That day in Hawaii, she was living her dream. Even though it ended far too soon, her family finds peace knowing she experienced true joy in her final moments. It was November 22, 2020, in the Pyrenees Mountains along the French-Spanish border. Esther Dingley, a 37-year-old British hiker, was nearing the end of a solo trekking trip. She was experienced and often shared her travels online. Esther and her longtime partner Dan Colgate had spent years traveling Europe together in a camper van, documenting their adventures on a blog. This time, Esther had decided to hike alone. That afternoon, she reached the summit of Pic de Sauvegarde, a 737-meter mountain, and sent Dan a selfie through WhatsApp around 4 p.m. They had a brief 90-second video call, the last time anyone would hear from her. Esther had planned to stay the night at Refuge de Venasque, a small unmanned shelter nearby. Her route crossed into France and circled back into Spain, a path within her skill level. Her last message to Dan read, "Might dip into France. Hoping Refuge Venasque has a winter room. Keep you posted when can. Love you, XTX." She never contacted him again. 3 days later, on November 25th, Dan reported her missing. He had been house-sitting about 100 miles away. Police forces from both France and Spain launched a joint search, covering nearly 700 square miles using drones, helicopters, and mountain rescue teams. Despite the extensive effort, no sign of Esther was found. As snowstorms worsened in early December, the search was suspended until spring. Dan stayed in France, continuing to search whenever conditions allowed. He had detailed her planned route in a 23-page document which Esther had confirmed before her hike. Still, no trace of her surfaced. By February 2021, Dan publicly expressed concerns that something more than an accident might have happened. He suggested Esther could have encountered trouble with others, possibly hunters. However, there was no evidence, and authorities continued treating the case as an accident. In spring 2021, as snow melted, the search resumed. On July 23rd, a group of mountain runners found part of a human skull near Port de la Glare, west of Esther's last known location. DNA testing later confirmed it was Esther's. On August 9th, Dan made a heartbreaking discovery himself. Returning to the mountains, he narrowed his search to an area about 400 meters below the summit of Pic de la Glaire. There he found Esther's remaining belongings and her body, hidden for months under snow and exposed to the elements. Her phone, backpack, and worn hiking shoes were recovered, though her yellow tent was never found. The condition of her shoes suggested heavy use, and she had been carrying Catula microspikes, gear meant for icy surfaces, but had not worn them. An autopsy revealed that Esther likely died instantly after falling about 100 feet. The injuries matched a high-impact fall from a rocky ridge. Investigators believe she had slipped on an icy path, made worse by the worn soles of her hiking shoes. Authorities searched Esther's phone but found no new information beyond her last video call with Dan. The area where she was found was remote and difficult to access, delaying recovery efforts. There were no signs of struggle or involvement of other people. The evidence pointed toward a fall while Esther was following her planned route along the mountain border. Despite her experience and equipment, the conditions had been harsh and unforgiving. The exact details of her fall remain unclear due to the severe weather and time that passed. Dan, who had never been considered a suspect, later released a joint statement with Esther's mother. They thanked everyone for their support and shared the pain of losing Esther, after months of hoping she might still be found alive. Esther Dingley's final journey was one she had prepared for carefully, but even with experience and planning, nature's risks can be unpredictable. It was April 23, 2025, in Sutton, Massachusetts. Carolyn Carey Sanger, a 49-year-old mother of 4 from Topsfield, had planned a hike with her family. The destination was Purgatory Chasm State Reservation, a spot known for its steep rock walls, uneven trails, and narrow pathways carved into solid bedrock. That day, Carey was joined by 3 of her children and her brother. The chasm is a popular place for families, challenging, scenic, and adventurous. For Carey, who loved nature and wellness, it was a chance to spend time with the people she cared about most. After years as an oncology nurse, she had recently shifted careers, becoming a licensed massage therapist and Reiki practitioner. She even opened her own studio, Balanced Body, in Topsfield. This hike was supposed to be a peaceful break, but at around 1:45 p.m., everything changed. A 911 call came into Sutton Police. A woman had fallen between 50 to 75 feet into the chasm. It was Carey. Emergency crews arrived quickly. The chasm, surrounded by cliffs and caves, is about a quarter-mile deep. When help reached her, several hikers who were medical professionals were already providing aid. They had witnessed what happened and tried to help immediately. Despite their efforts, Carey's injuries were too severe. She was pronounced dead shortly after. Authorities later confirmed that the fall happened right in front of her 3 children. After Carey slipped, the children ran to get help from park rangers, who then contacted state police and rescue teams. Her husband, Michael Sanger, got the devastating news soon after. Investigators believe the fall was accidental. A family friend, Tim Powley, explained that the spot where Carey fell was a particularly tricky part of the trail. He said, "We believe it was simply a loss of footing and a trip. That part of the trail is scarier. We don't believe she was distracted." Purgatory Chasm is known for tough trails and sharp drops. Hiker Andy Spears told WCVB, "There are trails above the chasm you can go along. Dangerous overhangs if you're going to the edge to look down. It's really sad that it had to happen at a place like this." Carey had no known health issues. Officials said the steep drop and rocky ground were likely factors. Even with quick help, there was nothing more that could be done. The Worcester County District Attorney's Office confirmed that the investigation is ongoing, but early signs show it was an accident. News of Carey's passing spread fast. Friends described her as kind, selfless, and devoted to her family. A close friend, Brooke Powley, started a GoFundMe to support the Sanger family, raising over $100,000 in just a few days. Brooke wrote, "She was a bright light, a wonderful, selfless mother who raised 4 incredible, respectful, responsible kids." Michael Sanger spoke to reporters wearing one of Carey's shirts. He said, "She's an amazing, amazing human. She was the brightness and the light on a dark day for a lot of people." The two had met in college and were about to celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary. Carey's impact stretched beyond her family. She was someone people turned to for support and healing. Friend and colleague Mo Levasseur said she could light up a room and make you feel safe. You could talk to her about anything. Carrie had recently left nursing to focus fully on her wellness practice, even renovating her studio herself. Friend said she was proud of what she had built. Back in 2016, Carrie and Michael had been featured in a local news story about veterans. Michael, who served in Iraq, credited Carrie for helping him through very difficult times. Friend Catherine Schoenfarber wrote, "Carrie was a radiant presence, a healer, a teacher, and a friend whose kindness touched countless lives." For the Sanger family and their community, the loss is hard to process. The Chasm, a place known for beauty and risk, became the site of an unimaginable tragedy. Carrie was surrounded by her loved ones in her final moments. In the days that followed, her family clung to memories, photos, and stories, keeping her spirit alive. Carrie Sanger was 49 years old.